this heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
From high school to international wrestling, on the mat and beyond, this is the Potentially Dangerous podcast with the guys from IA Wrestle.
If you're a fighter, you like a fight. If you're an American, you like a fight. If you're an Iowa Hawkeye, you know you're going to get a fight.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and all your podcast-friendly apps. And follow us on social media platforms at IA Wrestle. Time to strap it up and get to the show.
Alrighty, so welcome back to another episode of Potentially Dangerous, and we got a special guest on today, Mr. Josh Schamberger. Josh, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit for folks that might not be familiar with what you do.
Yeah, so I'm the president of the Convention and Visitors Bureau for Iowa City Coralville, and I've been here just short of about 20 years and been pretty involved in the wrestling community. We helped the university secure the Olympic trials the first time it came here in 12 and then again in 16, and I've been involved in a lot of things related to the wrestling program. Most recently, we secured the bid and hosted the UWW World Cup last April, or I guess in 18. Anytime I can get involved in wrestling or get our organization involved in anything related to wrestling, I'm 100% behind that.
So I kind of wanted to, talk a little bit about, because like you said, you've brought in quite a few events to that Coralville, Iowa City area. And I know you've also brought in is it the Jingle Cross? Is that what it's called, right?
Yeah, the Cyclocross World Cup. So the World Cup for another sport, obviously cycling. So that's been going on for 4 years. And, we're involved in really any big event that happens in this community. And we put on the marathon between Cedar Rapids and Iowa City. But again, anytime we can get attached to the hip of something wrestling, we're all in.
Right. So that's kind of where we're going to go now. To the big announcement this week was, of course, the Dan Gable Donnybrook. The Twitter account was started a couple months ago, I want to say, kind of teasing what it was about. But this week you had the official press conference to kind of introduce the tournament. Can you give us just the overview of what the tournament will be?
Yeah, it's intended to be a high school aged tournament for high school kids, boys and girls. The idea was really brought to me through Luke Eustace, former director of ops for Iowa Wrestling. He's now working on our staff, one of our sports development people. He and Nathan Eichhorst pitched this idea of wanting to put on this top level high school 32 team invite only tournament. And I fell in love with the idea immediately, especially with the time of year they wanted to do it, the first weekend in December every year, make it an annual deal. And I told them, I was all in, and I thought we should take it one step further and engage Coach Gable, get him involved, and everything kind of worked out. And anytime we can play the marketing side of that, as well as help co-produce it like we have with the trials and the World Cup, we'll do that. But the actual logistics of the tournament, running the tournament, all the details that are involved in that will reside with Nathan and the team that he's assembling.
So we're obviously, Gable is in the name. So where's the full namesake come from, though? How did you settle on the Dan Gable Donnybrook?
Yeah, well, we have a designer that we've been working with for years, and he's actually a former high school wrestler, and he now lives in Denver, and he used to be the art director for the hospitals and clinics. So he's done a lot of design work for me over the year. He did the original Grand Gable bike ride, which we put on design. And anytime I can throw something wrestling at him, he's all over it. So I was telling him, hey, I need you to put together a brand identity for this tournament we're doing. And I forget what we originally wanted to call it. It was Dan Gable something. And he came back and said, I've always wanted to use the word Donnybrook as it relates to a wrestling tournament. And I'm like, what the heck's a Donnybrook? And so I had, like everybody else, had to go into the dictionary. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, this is absolutely perfect. It's got great alliteration, and it's a fight. And so the history behind that word and the fight that comes with anything that is involved with Dan Gable, it's just it married very quickly. I mean, it was a perfect match.
Sorry, I had to pull it up. So,
oh yeah,
the Donnybrook is a scene of uproar and disorder, or a heated argument, is what Google comes up with the first definition of it.
Yeah, it's my understanding. It's the origins of the word are from the town of Donnybrook, Ireland, and basically the entire town one festival a year would just beat the crap out of each other. And it got known as, whenever there's a huge fight or an uproar, it's known as the Donnybrook. And, we intend to have this tournament someday aspire to be up there with the big tournaments in this country, the Beast of the East, the Ironman. We'd love for this to be at that level. And in order to be at that level, the competition it's going to be a fight. And that's what we want. So if Nathan can take care of the competition and Coach Gable and everybody that's involved from the tournament side, we will do what we do and take care of the hospitality side. When these high school kids come to town, the boys and girls, it's our intention to treat them as if, it was Iowa State or Iowa going to a bowl game. And the way that they roll out the red carpet for those athletes, we're going to roll out the red carpet for these high school athletes when they come to Coralville.
You kind of mentioned, the involvement with, you've listed quite a few names, but obviously the headliner is going to be Gable. So what will his involvement with the tournament be?
Well, he'll be at all the tournaments, and he'll certainly be there to present the award the champions. He'll definitely have an advisory role. We'll keep him up to speed on all aspects of the event, and he'll most likely have veto power on anything that he thinks isn't in line or up to his standards. And we intend to obviously make everything up to his standards. It's got to be the best tournament we can do to have his name on it. So he'll be very involved as much as he wants to be. It's my hope that, 5 years down the road, there's schools all over the country. I know currently we're bound by that rule that says we can only compete against high schools can only compete against those in contiguous states. That's a little disappointing, but it is what it is. So we're bound by that rule at the moment. Hopefully that'll change. But even so, it's my hope that 5 years from now, high schools are hoping to receive a letter of invite to the Dan Gable Donnybrook signed by Coach Gable. And they know they want that invite because the competition is going to be top notch and because of the way that they're going to be treated when they come into really the mecca of wrestling for North America and arguably the world.
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to turn down a letter from Gable saying, "Hey, we want your team here in Iowa City wrestling."
in my tournament, yeah.
Yeah. So you said he's gonna, present champion awards. Do you guys have like a cool trophy or anything in mind in the works?
Not yet, but it has been talked about a little bit. The individual awards, we've actually already developed the sort of the logo that people have seen out there. There's a couple of variations of that. One of them was specifically designed for the trophies, and so there's been a little bit of thought to it. But that's as far as where that is on the task list. That's something that we'll shore up as we get closer to the event.
And then I don't know if we've talked about the location specifically. So this is going to be in that new Coralville arena, the Extreme Arena. What can you tell us, in general, since that's a pretty new facility that's going up? What can you tell us about the arena itself and what we can come to expect about, the layout of the tournament?
Yeah, the arena is something that I'm super excited about and have been for a while, just because, Iowa City, Coralville area is obviously well known for wrestling. But we've never, ever been able to actually get into the tournament hosting business for freestyle and Greco. And it's because obviously those seasons run, April, September through there. And Carver Hawkeye Arena is not air conditioned. And a lot of people forget that. And so it really renders it useless for us trying to go after events and host them. When they had the Final X or whatever that turned into a couple years ago, or the most recent years, there was interest in doing one here in June, but it just isn't going to work. The university's not going to take the risk of having spectators pass out because of the heat that is generated there with no AC. So the arena will be open next August. It'll seat about 5,200 people in fixed seats. It'll have suites. It'll be a pretty nice venue, very nice venue. And the exciting part for us, it'll be able to hold 8 mats. So the floor space is great. But the exciting part is immediately adjacent to it, connected by a couple tunnels, really only about maybe 40 yards worth of tunnels, is a 60,000 square foot field house. And we can get about 22 to 24 additional mats in there. So it'll be quite a venue for wrestling. And we intend to, we've designed it with wrestling in mind, with fiber so we can have call to mat space from the field house directly onto the arena floor. There are huge floor to ceiling windows between the two venues. And we're just super excited about it. You can go right now to extremearena.com or Green State Family Fieldhouse, and you can look at some renderings of all the space. And pretty soon there'll be some renderings that show some wrestling mats and how that's going to look.
Yeah, I know for, just kind of speaking this past, was it just a couple weeks ago when Who's Number One was in Carver Hawkeye, it was it definitely got a little bit warm. So I can imagine trying to put an event in Carver in the summer, obviously not ideal. So that's why we're also really excited about this new arena going up. 32 teams. I mean, that seems pretty ambitious out of the gate. So do you kind of have a plan in place on, where these teams are going to come from? I know you guys can draw out of state, but I mean, do you have pseudo commitments kind of lined up?
Yeah, Nathan says he does, and I've left that all up to Nathan. He's got a lot of contacts, and he's already got a couple schools here in the corridor that are going to be the host schools for the tournament, and some commitments there. I told him that it was my recommendation he don't announce them a little by little. He gets them all locked up, and then in the next 30 or 60 days, when we get the tournament and the schools all figured out, we announce them kind of all together. It is ambitious, but let's strive for as strong of a tournament as we can get. And if we got to grow into that, we got to grow into that. We know we definitely won't have 32 schools for girls wrestling, but if we can start with 10 or 12 schools and really get some a good, strong level competition there, that's what we're going to do. And we can run with the mat space that we have. We can run really a 2-day tournament on all those mats and run them parallel. So Nathan's super excited about it. I got a lot of confidence in him. I got a lot of confidence in Luke Eustace, and I think those two guys will pull it off. A lot of folks might not remember, but Luke was pretty involved in setting up the grapple and the gridiron and a lot of events. So those guys, and them well, they know how to put on events.
Yeah, I was going to kind of bring that up next, that, the two guys you have in charge of this seem pretty well suited. Like you mentioned, the grapple on the gridiron, that was Luke's really big project he put together. I know Coach Tom Brands for the University of Iowa really complimented all the work Luke put in for that. For other folks that might not know, Luke and Nate Eichhorst were really influential in getting putting that Night of Conflict, the Conflict at Carver tournament that ran for years. And the Night of Conflict also partnered with you guys for a couple of years on that. And, that tournament was always a really successful preseason tournament. So I think, the Donnybrook is in good hands is what I would say to fans that, maybe not familiar with those names from a event standpoint. You mentioned that there are, this was built with the wrestling in mind, this event center. So are there other tournaments, obviously, then that you have your eyes on that you'd want to bring to the area?
Yeah, we're actually right now in the process of taking a pretty deep dive and look with USA Wrestling on 2023 Junior Worlds for this venue. It's a perfect size venue for it. We think Junior Worlds would be very successful here in Iowa City, Coralville. Obviously, that's a pretty big commitment. We've really got to go through all of the minutia of all the details and working with UWW, which can be a little challenging since they're all the way over in Vevey, Switzerland, and we've had some experience of that with the World Cup. But we're looking pretty hard at that. We're also looking hard again at the World Cup coming back. They moved the World Cup to December in future years. That works actually a lot better for us than that first week or second week of April. So this venue would be well suited for either of those events. There's a lot that we're exploring right now, and far more than UWW stuff. There's other tournaments we'd like to create, or at least open up the opportunity that they can rotate into this Extreme Arena venue.
And I know there's a lot that goes into bidding these events, especially an event like a UWW level. And obviously USA Wrestling is really involved. But from your perspective, you guys brought in the World Cup, which was a really big deal for this area. Did you kind of get any, feedback, and did how the event went in 2018? Do you think that has a really positive impact going forward then? Can you kind of describe that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we blew away UWW when they walked into that arena. I mean, they had a lot of back and forth, like, oh, how do you, this is how the signage needs to be. And, we would tell them, hey, we've put on events. You're going to be impressed. And they walked in, they're like, we'll never question how you set this up again. This is perfect. And, when President Lalovich flew over here and spent a couple days at the World Cup, he pulled me into the hallway in the back room and asked me, they were asking whether or not I'd sign a 4-year contract on the spot to have this be here for the next 4 years. That's how impressed they were with the setup, with the way the event rolled out. They had never had as many fans as they've ever seen, a lot of these countries, and some of those duels were incredible. I mean, that Japan-Cuba third place match was phenomenal. Just great wrestling, and we had some challenges there. Russia and Iran pulled their antics and made up excuses as to why they couldn't come. That's disappointing, but it is what it is. We ended up having a great tournament, and at some point we'll have that event again, and Russia will hopefully show up, and our wrestlers will hand it to them like they would have if they would have came in 18.
I mean, I think you're right. It was a really good spectacle. I was unfortunately only able to watch it on TV. I had a brand new baby at that time, so it was just poor timing on my part. I'll have to look at the wrestling schedule the next time we have a kid, apparently. But so I think you guys put together a really good event. So it's really great to hear that UWW's feedback was positive, and we're really looking forward. I know. I've seen a lot of the interviews went back, and they're probably a couple of years old now, but of you and brands talking probably with the Register about bringing in a junior or cadet world tournament to this area. And, I know that's been a goal of your guys' for a long time. So I think the fan support would be great for it. Obviously, the Iowa City area has kind of shown up for the last few, so they would probably continue that momentum. I do want to kind of go back to that Donnybrook, kind of close out on this. So you said you wanted to be the first weekend, early December timeframe, and that's obviously the timing of a couple big other tournaments in the state of Iowa. So what are your thoughts on, obviously there's got to find that balance of all these great tournaments.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was the challenge. When you look at the wrestling season, there isn't a weekend you can't schedule something that you're not going up against 2 or 3 other tournaments. And I know that even from the elementary level with my own son wrestling. I mean, every weekend you can log on our Predicament or wherever the website is you're looking at, and you can pick which tournament you want to go to. There's 3 or 4 happening every single weekend. And so, we will be going head to head with a couple of them, but hopefully they're interested in partnering, and whatever schools either don't get into ours or don't get into theirs because of space, we can work with each other and figure out a way to just grow wrestling. I know that Dan Gable being a big part of this will be a big draw and a big name, and people will expect a very high level of service and competition. So we aim to do that, and that includes partnering with other events.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of space for it. I know it seems crowded right now, but when you think you can pull in, this might attract a couple teams from Missouri, Minnesota, Illinois that might not have, the other big tournament that draws out of state teams is the Independence, Cliff Keen Independence Invite. And then the Keith Young's obviously a big tournament around that same time. But I just think that there's room for other teams that, might have got turned away, or like you said, could look at it. It's also a good idea that, maybe a team doesn't want to go to the Keith Young every year. They want to kind of switch it up and get a little bit of different feel and see some different guys. So this provides that opportunity to kind of get a little bit different feel than a stale, schedule every year. So we're definitely looking forward to the Donnybrook. Is there anything else in general we should probably know about the event, or any way we can get further details on it?
No, I think the only thing we haven't talked about that's important to note is, we one of the beneficiaries of this tournament, we're setting aside a fund here with the local foundation and going to use the funds to kind of support and grow girls wrestling here in Iowa. And I know that I'm not as I don't have the history or understand why we don't have girls wrestling sanctioned yet in Iowa, and I don't know that I'm ready to get in on that particular discussion. But it should happen at some point. And so however it needs to happen to grow girls wrestling, I know that I talk to the local high school guys all the time. I was told by Cody Pudel over there that there's like 80 or 90 girls right now just at West High that are interested in wrestling. That's unbelievable. I mean, that's awesome. And so if we can start by maybe developing a pretty strong club program here in Iowa City, Coralville area with all the area high schools, and maybe that club program can be modeled, and we can use some of this fund to help hire some club coaches. And maybe once we do get around to sanctioning girls wrestling in Iowa, those club programs can really already start and transfer over pretty quickly into high school teams. So I'm really excited about that. I'm working with Gable's daughters on that. It's really important to me. I don't have girls, but I absolutely have loved watching the women's wrestling programs develop here when we host the Olympic trials. I love doing everything I can to support Coach Steiner and the women's program. And, Clarissa Chun has been here a few times, and my son has loved watching her wrestle. So we need to do everything we can to sort of empower those girls and help the women wrestlers the way Tom and Terry recently had, but with the additions to the Hawkeye Wrestling Club.
Yeah, maybe that is something I kind of neglected to mention, and you're definitely seeing that trend around the nation with other states sanctioning the women's athletes. I, like you, I probably don't have enough I probably am not the most qualified person to speak about the particulars, but it's definitely a positive impact, momentum across the nation we're seeing. In a state like Iowa, where we claim this is our sport, wrestling, it's, you would think it'd be something we'd move in that direction too. I do know there was that state tournament in Waverly this past year, so that maybe we're heading in the right direction. And with the Donnybrook, now having an option for, like you said, starting out with maybe 10 teams, 12 teams as a good first year goal. That's just another trigger to keep things moving in the right direction. So we're definitely looking forward to both, the boys' side and the girls' side for this tournament. So
for sure.
All right. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. We know you're a busy man. You're always moving and shaking down there in the in the Visitors Bureau.
Anytime, anything I can do to help you guys, I've been really impressed with the commitment and that you guys have made to wrestling and just the growth of Iowa Wrestle. And I really like all you guys, Kirk and Tony and the whole crew. Just do a really, really good job. So thanks for everything you're doing.
Oh, we appreciate that. So, folks, if you haven't checked it out, you can just Google Dan Gable Donnybrook. I know Cody Goodwin of the Des Moines Register and KJ Pilcher are two articles that I read on the tournament to kind of get maybe some other thoughts from your guys' initial press conference. You guys can go out and read those. I would highly recommend it. And thanks again, Josh, for joining us.
You bet. Thank you, buddy. Have a good day.